You don't forget the sound of a middle-aged woman screeching across a lake like a hawk with a clipboard. Especially not when it's a perfect Saturday, the grill's going, and your old Marine buddies are finally visiting for the first time in years. "Excuse me." "Excuse me," came the voice, nasal and sharp, cutting through the laughter and music like a rusty nail across glass. I looked up from my chair on the dock, a cold drink sweating in my hand. My dog Diesel perked up too, ears twitching, and there she was, Karen. Real name, Patricia Densmore. HOA board vice president and certified fun vacuum. She was stomping down the slope from the paved path, wearing a wide-brimmed hat, oversized sunglasses, and the unmistakable fury of someone who just spotted joy and needed to kill it. "Are these people with you?" she snapped, pointing at my guests bobbing on inner tubes in the lake, beers in hand. I stood up slowly. "Yeah, these are my guests, Patricia. This is a shared lake," she barked. "HOA rules clearly state that non-residents are not permitted in the lake without prior approval from the board." I blinked. "First of all, no they don't. Second, this isn't shared HOA property, this is my land." She froze for half a second as if the words didn't compute. "That's impossible." "The entire lake is governed by the association. It's in the community bylaws." I pulled out the laminated survey map I kept in the storage box on the dock because I knew this day would come. "Nope, see this." I pointed to the highlighted section. "My property line extends 20 feet into the water. This part of the lake is mine, private, bought it with the land." Her nostrils flared like a cartoon villain. "That can't be right. Call the county, title office, anyone you want," I said. "But you're trespassing." She looked around as if the trees were going to back her up. "You're being combative." "No," I said, calm as ever. "I'm trying to enjoy a day off without the HOA policing my shoreline. You walked onto my property yelling at my guests." "That's harassment." Two of my buddies floated closer to the dock, watching the whole thing unfold. One of them, Reggie, called out, "Hey, you want a drink, ma'am? Might help with that blood pressure." Patricia turned a deep shade of red. She opened her mouth again, but I cut her off. "We're not done, by the way. Because if you're threatening fines or action based on made-up rules, that's abuse of authority. And it's gonna be documented." She huffed and stormed off, but not before yelling over her shoulder, "We'll see what the HOA president has to say about this." I watched her retreat up the hill, muttering to herself. Reggie paddled in. "Man, who was that?" "HOA Karen," I said. "And she just declared war." By Monday morning, I figured Patricia would have cooled off, maybe even realized she overstepped. That was naive. I pulled into my driveway around 7:30, still in scrubs after a brutal overnight ER shift. Diesel trotted up to greet me like nothing had happened, tail wagging and eyes bright. But taped to my front door, flapping in the breeze like a warning sign, was a bright orange slip stamped "Notice of Violation." I tore it down, already feeling a headache creep in behind my eyes. The language was bureaucratic nonsense, accusations of unauthorized lakefront activity, non-resident trespass, and disruption of community harmony. They even threw in a threat of daily fines until I ceased illegal use of HOA-controlled water features. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. Inside, I tossed the paper on the kitchen counter and opened my laptop. I'd already scanned my deed and property survey years ago. I pulled them up again, just to be sure. There it was in black and white. My parcel included a wedge of the lake, clearly outlined and legally recorded. No easements. No shared access. No HOA jurisdiction. I emailed the documents to my lawyer, a guy named Colin who'd helped me close on the house. Former JAG, smart as hell and twice as stubborn. Within 15 minutes, he called. "They're bluffing," he said. "You're well within your rights. But if they try to enforce this with fines or legal action, I want everything documented." "I've got security footage of her coming onto my property," I said. "Audio too. Keep a copy off-site and start a paper trail. Every notice, every conversation, log it." I hung up and started a folder. I wasn't going to let this get buried in passive-aggressive threats. If they wanted a fight, they were going to find out just how prepared I could be. That afternoon, I drove down to City Hall. Not the HOA clubhouse where Patricia and her cronies ran their petty kingdom, but the actual municipal offices. I requested the original plat maps, development permits, and a copy of the HOA's recorded authority limits. The clerk, a man with a coffee stain on his tie, squinted at the screen for a moment before printing out several pages. "Looks like the lake was originally split between 6 parcels," he said. "Only 2 of those are still privately owned. Yours is 1. Rest was sold to the HOA 5 years ago." I nodded. "So their control stops where my line begins." "Exactly." On my way out, I stopped by the zoning desk and asked if an HOA could fine a resident for using their own lakefront. The woman behind the desk raised an eyebrow. "Only if there's a covenant or easement agreement signed by the owner. Otherwise, they've got no legal leg to stand on." I thanked her and left with a folder thick enough to break a window. By Thursday, the situation escalated. I came home from work to find a group of strangers standing at the edge of my lawn, wearing high-vis vests and holding measuring equipment. One of them had a clipboard. Patricia was there too, arms folded and jaw tight. "What's going on?" I asked, stepping out of my truck. The guy with the clipboard looked surprised. "We were told this section of shoreline is being reassessed for community access designation. We're just conducting a preliminary survey." "Who sent you?" HOA board president. "Said they were submitting a motion to reclassify this segment of the lake as common property." I stared at him. "This is private land. You're trespassing." Patricia stepped forward. "As of last night's board meeting, we voted to initiate reclassification. Once the motion passes, this area will fall under HOA water management jurisdiction. You don't have the authority to vote my land into your control." She gave a tight smile. "We'll let the courts decide that." I didn't respond. I just took out my phone and started recording. The surveyors looked uneasy. "Gentlemen," I said, "unless you have a court order or county authorization, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. And if you return without one, I'll file trespassing charges." They packed up quickly. Patricia lingered, but I didn't give her the satisfaction of a confrontation. That night, Colin and I filed an injunction. The following week, a plain manila envelope arrived in my mailbox. No stamp, just hand-delivered. Inside was a copy of the HOA meeting minutes unsigned, and unnotarized claiming their vote to annex my portion of the lake passed unanimously. They also included a proposed fine schedule, $100 per day for defiance, retroactive to the date of the alleged violation. Colin nearly spit coffee when he saw it. "They're trying to fabricate a land grab," he said. "This is fraud." We filed a complaint with the county recorder's office and submitted copies of the forged minutes to the state attorney general's Consumer Protection Division. I also sent a formal cease and desist to the HOA board, citing unauthorized attempts to alter property boundaries and fraudulent enforcement threats. That Friday, I got a knock on the door. It wasn't Patricia this time. 2 sheriff's deputies stood on my porch, both looking uncomfortable. "Mr. Grayson?" one asked. "Yeah. We received a report from the HOA alleging illegal construction along the shoreline. Said you were installing a dock without permits." I gestured behind me. "That dock's been there for 6 years. It was part of the original inspection when I bought the property." The other deputy glanced at a clipboard. "Do you mind if we take a look?" "Not at all," I said and led them out back. They walked the length of the dock, checked the structure, took a few photos and asked about the permit number. I handed them a copy from my records. The first deputy sighed. "This is in order." "Sorry to bother you, sir." Before they left, I asked, "Do you get a lot of calls from the HOA?" They exchanged a look. "We've been out here 6 times this month for reports that didn't pan out," one said. "Mostly from the same caller, Patricia." The next morning, I installed 2 new security cameras. One faced the lake. The other pointed at my front lawn. both fed to a cloud server with motion alerts. Colin forwarded me a message from the county prosecutor's office that afternoon. They were opening an investigation into the HOA's documentation practices, based on the forged meeting minutes and fraudulent land classification attempt. By Sunday, things boiled over. I was fixing a busted fence post near the lake when I heard tires crunching down the gravel access road behind my property. That road was meant for emergency vehicles only. I grabbed my phone and walked toward the sound. A black SUV rolled to a stop. Out stepped Patricia and a man I hadn't seen before early 50s, salt and pepper hair, wearing a navy blazer and khakis. He had the cautious posture of someone who'd been dragged into a mess he didn't understand. "Mr. Grayson," the man said, extending a hand. "I'm Gerald Ross." "HOA president." I didn't shake. "Your vice president's been making false claims about my property, your board submitted forged documentation, and you've tried to claim legal authority you don't have." He held up both hands. "I'm here to resolve this." We didn't authorize Patricia to file that motion with the county. It was never brought to a vote. She handed me minutes that said otherwise. They weren't official. I'm handling it internally. I turned to Patricia. "So you forged documents and tried to seize private land without board approval?" Her lips were pressed so tightly they nearly disappeared. "I'm not admitting anything," she said. Gerald looked mortified. "I've already filed with the state," I said. "You'll be hearing from the county recorder's office too, and if you send one more trespasser to my shoreline, I'll press charges." Gerald nodded. "Understood." They left without further comment. That evening I got a call from a neighbor named Leela. Soft-spoken, kind woman, retired nurse. "You should know," she said quietly. "We had a special meeting. Patricia's been suspended pending investigation. Gerald's asking the board to dissolve her position entirely. Appreciate the heads up. And, thank you, most people wouldn't have stood up like that. She's been bullying new residents for years." I sat on the porch with Diesel beside me, watching the lake glow gold in the setting sun. For the first time in weeks, the water was still, quiet, peaceful, but I wasn't lowering my guard just yet. Patricia might have been knocked off her perch, but people like her never went down easy. The next board meeting wasn't supposed to be public, but word got around fast after Patricia's suspension. By the time I arrived, the small conference room at the community center was packed residents shoulder to shoulder, whispering over steaming paper cups of bad coffee. The folding chairs creaked under shifting weight, and people kept glancing toward the front like they were waiting for a curtain to rise. Gerald sat at the head of the table, scanning a folder while trying not to look overwhelmed. The rest of the board, 4 members who rarely spoke unless Patricia was directing traffic, looked equally uneasy. An empty chair sat conspicuously at the end of the row. I found a spot near the back wall, just behind the Mitchells, whose backyard faced the opposite side of the lake. They looked up and gave me a small nod, respectful this time, not cautious like before. Gerald cleared his throat. "Before we begin, I'd like to address the issue that's brought many of you here tonight. As of last week, Vice President Densmore has been placed on temporary leave pending the outcome of an internal review." A woman near the front raised her hand, but didn't wait to be called. "Does that review include how she's been using HOA funds without approval?" The room went quiet. Gerald blinked. "I'm not aware of any unauthorized spending." The woman stood. "Then maybe you should look at check number 1086, $500 to a private investigator, dated 3 weeks ago." Now everyone was sitting forward. Gerald looked at the treasurer, a jittery man with thinning hair and a pale face. The treasurer gave a weak shrug. "I didn't authorize that," he said. "It wasn't on any invoice I reviewed." Gerald looked down at his folder again, flipping pages until he found something. He held up a photocopy of the check. "Where did you get this?" "From her recycling bin," the woman said. "She threw it out with a bunch of shredded papers. I do data recovery for a living." A man near the door let out a low whistle. Gerald rubbed his temple. Let the record show that we will be launching a financial audit of all discretionary expenses for the past fiscal year. If there are further irregularities— "Oh, there are," someone else said. "You should check the landscaping contract too." She hired her nephew's company at double rate and they haven't trimmed anything in months. The meeting unraveled from there. People stood up one after another, some angry, some just tired, each with a separate complaint tied back to Patricia. Mysterious fines, missing maintenance records, petty citations that turned into lien threats. One man said his deck repair permit had been denied 3 times, only to be approved the week after he sold his house. Gerald tried to regain control, but the room had already turned. I waited until the commotion died down before stepping forward. Gerald gave me a weary nod. "You've got a bigger problem than just misuse of funds," I said. Patricia submitted falsified documents to the county recorder's office. She tried to reclassify land that doesn't fall under HOA jurisdiction. I've already filed a report with the county prosecutor. "And they're escalating it." He didn't look surprised, just resigned. "We've been contacted by the county investigator. They're requesting copies of all board meeting agendas and minutes for the past 2 years. They'll also want communication records," I added. "Emails, internal memos, anything tied to enforcement decisions." The room went silent again. Gerald nodded slowly. "Understood." After the meeting, people gathered outside in small clusters. Conversations were quieter now, more cautious. I was halfway to my truck when a man caught up to me, tapping my shoulder. "Grayson, right?" he asked. "I'm Officer Tolley, County Fraud Division." He handed me a card, plain white with a gold badge emblem stamped in the corner. "I've got a few questions about the forged minutes you submitted to the DA. Do you have the original copy with Patricia's handwriting on it?" I nodded. "Scanned and time-stamped. I also have video of her delivering it." "Good," he said. "She's officially under criminal investigation. Attempted real estate fraud, falsification of public records, and unlawful use of association authority. If this goes to court, we'll need you to testify." "Happy to," I said. He paused. "We also found something else. Her private investigator. He was caught digging through property tax files using a fake work request. We're adding unlawful data access to the charge sheet." I hadn't expected that, but it made sense. Patricia never did anything halfway. Later that week, I was replacing a rotted stair plank on my dock when Leela showed up carrying a tin of lemon bars. She handed them over with a sheepish smile, then sat on the edge of the dock, her feet just above the waterline. "I didn't come here to talk about Patricia," she said. "I came because I'm tired of people being afraid of their neighbors." I glanced up from my work. "You're not the only one. She's been running this neighborhood like a dictatorship," Layla said. "I used to think it was easier to just keep my head down, but watching you stand up to her, that changed things." I didn't say anything right away. The breeze was light that day, just enough to ripple the lake. "Gerald's calling for a recall vote," she said. "Not just to remove her from the board permanently, but to dissolve the enforcement committee she created." "That committee was never authorized in the original bylaws," I said. "She just gave it a name and started issuing fines." Leela nodded. "Exactly, we're rewriting the charter. With legal oversight this time." The recall vote was scheduled for 3 weeks later. In the days leading up to it, volunteers went door to door with clipboards and voter forms. Signs started appearing in windows. "Restore fairness, no more tyrants, vote yes to clean house." I didn't campaign. I didn't need to. Everyone already knew where I stood. When the day came, the turnout was the largest in the community's history. People brought lawn chairs and coolers. A local taco truck parked near the tennis courts. It felt more like a festival than a vote. That night, the results were announced over the clubhouse loudspeaker. The recall passed with 84% approval. Patricia was officially removed from the board. Her enforcement committee was dissolved. All fines issued under her authority were suspended pending review. A few days later, I saw her SUV pull away from her house in the early morning. A moving van followed. She didn't say goodbye to anyone. The new board formed quickly. Gerald stepped down, citing exhaustion. Leela was nominated as interim president. One of the first motions she passed was a transparency amendment, every meeting recorded, every vote logged, public access to all financial records. A month later, I received a certified letter from the county prosecutor. Patricia had accepted a plea deal. 2 years probation, a $5,000 fine, and a ban from holding any HOA position in the state for life. I framed that letter and hung it in my garage. The lake stayed quiet after that. No more surprise visitors, no more threats. Just the sound of water lapping against the dock and Diesel snoring on his back in the sun. The funny thing? I never wanted to fight anyone. I just wanted peace. But sometimes, the only way to keep peace is to stand your ground when someone tries to take it from you. And once you do, you find out you're not standing alone. 2 months passed and the lake remained calm. Not just the water, everything. There were no late-night complaints, no bogus citations, no strangers loitering near my property line with clipboards. Diesel spent more time snoozing under the oak tree than barking. I thought we were finally through the worst of it. Then in mid-September, I got a call from Colin. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "You're not going to like this," he said, voice tight. "But you need to hear it from me before it leaks." I leaned against the kitchen counter, already bracing myself. "Tell me." "The county just uncovered a second set of books," he said. "Separate from the official HOA records, it looks like Patricia had been maintaining a private ledger. Unregistered accounts off the book's payments. And the worst part, she used HOA funds to make personal purchases. Large ones." I pushed the coffee pot away, appetite gone. "How large?" "She wired nearly $30,000 to a shell company registered under a fake name. That money was supposed to go toward shoreline restoration." I exhaled slowly. "Let me guess, that company doesn't exist." "It does," Colin said. "But it's just a mailbox in Nevada, no employees, no contracts, and the address is linked to a post office box she's rented for years." "They've got her." The next day, I was contacted by the county prosecutor's office again, this time by a deputy DA named Morales. She asked if I'd be willing to submit the recordings from the lake incident, not for the land dispute, but as evidence of pattern behavior, abuse of power, intimidation tactics, and falsified authority. I agreed. 2 weeks later, Morales subpoenaed the HOA's financial records, both the official ones and the newly discovered private ledger. The board turned everything over, and forensic accountants started digging. It didn't take long for more things to surface. Patricia hadn't just redirected HOA funds, she'd opened a line of credit in the association's name, using forged signatures from 2 deceased former board members. She then used that credit to pay off personal legal bills from an old civil case in another county, one involving a real estate dispute she'd lost years ago. Morales called again. "We're charging her with wire fraud, bank fraud, and identity theft, federal level. The FBI is stepping in." By then, Patricia had vanished. Her house stood empty, blinds drawn. A dead fern sat by the front door, brittle and untouched. The mailbox overflowed. Some said she'd fled to Arizona. Others claimed she was hiding out with family in Montana. No one really knew. But the feds did. They tracked her to a rental cabin outside Flagstaff, where she was picked up without incident. The arrest made the local news. A grainy mugshot, a scrolling headline. "Former HOA official indicted on multiple counts of fraud." Residents gathered in driveways, watching it unfold on phones and tablets, disbelief mixing with vindication. At the emergency board meeting that followed, I stood toward the back again, arms crossed. Leela sat at the front now, flanked by 2 new board members, both longtime residents who had never run for anything until now. The atmosphere was different, more cautious, sharper. No one looked bored. "We're cooperating fully with federal investigators," Leela said. "And we've initiated a third-party audit of all HOA accounts dating back 5 years. We will make every misstep public. No more secrets. Someone asked if dues would increase to cover the stolen funds. Layla shook her head. We've filed a civil suit to recover the missing money. If there's a shortfall, we'll hold a vote before making any financial decisions. No action will be taken without full transparency. After the meeting, Gerald approached me in the parking lot. He looked lighter. Not relieved exactly, but no longer carrying Patricia's shadow. I should have pushed back earlier, he said. I saw signs, I ignored them. I didn't offer forgiveness, just a nod. You're making it right now, I said. That's what counts. He left without another word. A few days later, I got a package in the mail, no return address. Inside was a manila envelope filled with old photographs, some of the lake during construction, others of the original plat map with handwritten notes in the margins. One photo, dated 20 years earlier, showed a much younger Patricia smiling beside a campaign sign that read, "Take back the lake, vote Densmore." I forwarded everything to Morales. Turns out, Patricia had been trying to control the lake for years, long before I ever moved in. She tried to pressure the original developer into donating the shoreline to the HOA. When they refused, she started a personal campaign to slowly chip away at individual parcels, using every tool she could: fines, intimidation, forged documents. She'd succeeded once, coercing an elderly couple into signing over their access rights in exchange for fee forgiveness. That case had been buried until now. Morales reopened it. Restitution was ordered. The couple's family received a formal apology and full restoration of their rights. The board voted to nullify every action Patricia had taken during her time as vice president. Some residents called it a purge. I called it overdue. The new board drafted a revised charter, this time with input from the entire community. I was asked to sit on the advisory committee. At first I declined. I didn't want to be part of another political mess, but Layla convinced me. We need people who aren't afraid to say no, she said. You already did the hard part, now help us build something better. So I did. We rewrote enforcement standards with actual oversight. We introduced term limits, and we banned single-person committees from ever holding enforcement power again. The lake was designated a protected zone. No one could claim exclusive authority over it, not even the HOA. Property lines were reaffirmed and filed with the county recorder's office, updated with new signage to prevent future confusion. Every resident received a physical copy, notarized and stamped. In spring, we held a community gathering down by the water. Not a meeting, not a protest, just a picnic. Kids splashed in the shallows. Someone brought a guitar. Diesel made the rounds like a celebrity, accepting scraps and belly rubs from everyone. Reggie showed up too. He pulled me aside, grinning. Didn't think one lake party would turn into a federal indictment, he said. I chuckled. Neither did I. But you stood your ground. Most people wouldn't, I shrugged. Didn't have much of a choice. He nodded toward the water. You did more than keep a dock. You gave people their spine back. That night, as the sun dipped below the trees, I sat at the edge of the dock with Diesel curled at my feet. The lake reflected the sky like glass, undisturbed, peaceful. Not because someone enforced it, but because no one dared try to take it again. And that, finally, was enough.